Welcome bike. In the 1990s, Australia was confronted with one of the most disturbing criminal investigations in its history. What became known as the bodies in the Barrows case exposed a disturbing culture of manipulation, exploitation, and extremist ideology. Despite the nickname, most crimes did not occur in The name comes from a shocking discovery in a disused bank building. Between 1992 and 1999, 12 people were murdered. What follows are 10 dark and deeply unsettling facts about the case that still haunt Australia today. Number 10. The Wall of Spiders. Long before the bodies were discovered, John Bunting had created what he called a moral mission. Inside his home, he constructed a wall covered in names connected by string, later called the Wall of Spiders. It functioned as a self-made network of alleged offenders, people he personally judged as immoral or deviant. Many of those listed had never been convicted of any crime. Some were targeted based on rumor, prejudice, or grievances. This wall became a psychological blueprint. It allowed Bunting to rationalize violence as cleansing the community. It helped him recruit others who were persuaded they were participating in something justified. What began as hateful ideology would escalate into calculated murder. Number 9. The systematic concealment. Investigators later uncovered that the crimes were not impulsive acts. They were organized. Victims were killed, and their remains were concealed in plastic barrels. Acid was used to reduce odor and slow identification. 6 barrels containing the remains of 8 victims were discovered inside a disused state bank vault in Snowtown in 19. Level of planning and effort to hide the crimes demonstrated chilling foresight and an expectation they would not be caught. Number 8. The cannibalism allegation. One of the most disturbing elements revealed during trial involved allegations that a small portion of a victim's remains had been cooked. This claim emerged through testimony from an accomplice and was initially subject to suppression orders due to its graphic nature. While the detail became widely reported years later, it underscored how the violence had evolved far beyond any claimed moral purpose. By the final murders, the crimes reflected dominance, humiliation, and complete psychological detachment. Number 7. Identity, theft, and welfare fraud. Beyond violence, there was another motive. Money. After killing victims, the group frequently assumed their identities. They accessed bank accounts and collected welfare payments. They communicated with government agencies while impersonating the deceased. In total, authorities estimated they fraudulently obtained nearly 100,000 Australian dollars. This financial manipulation helped sustain the group and delayed suspicion. Some victims were not reported missing. Official records suggested they were still active in receiving payments. The deception was deliberate and sustained. Number 6. The so-called computer court evidence revealed that several victims were subjected to prolonged abuse before death. Among the items recovered was a car battery device the group referred to as the computer. It was reportedly used to inflict electric shocks during interrogation-style sessions. Victims were restrained and forced to endure both physical abuse and verbal accusations. These sessions were not chaotic acts of rage. They were structured, repeated, and controlled, reinforcing that the crimes were about power and domination. Number 5. The murder within the inner circle. The violence eventually turned inward. Elizabeth Hayden, wife of accomplice Mark Hayden, was murdered in 1998. Bunting decided she posed a risk to the group. Despite her husband's involvement in concealment efforts, he did not prevent the killing. He later pleaded guilty. Her death demonstrated that loyalty offered no protection. Anyone perceived as a liability could become a target. Number 4. The 140-kilometer transport. Although the case is known as the Snowtown murders, most killings occurred in Adelaide's northern suburbs. When suspicions grew due to odor and detention in residential areas, the group transported barrels nearly 140 kilometers north to They chose a disused bank building, believing the reinforced vault would contain smell and scrutiny. The decision to move evidence across public highways, undetected, remains one of the most shocking logistical aspects of the case. Number 3. Forced farewell recordings to maintain their financial fraud and prevent concern from families. Several victims were forced to record farewell messages. Under duress, they stated they were leaving town or starting new lives. These recordings were later played to relatives or referenced in communication with authorities. For families, the psychological impact was devastating. Loved ones believed the victims had chosen to disappear, not realizing they had been killed. It was manipulation layered on top of murder. Number 2. Targeting Michelle Gardner. Among the 12 victims was Michelle Gardner, a 19-year-old transgender woman. She was initially befriended before becoming a target of Bunting's escalating prejudice. Her murder highlighted how the group's ideology expanded beyond its original claims and increasingly targeted vulnerable individuals. Michelle's case remains one of the most painful aspects of the Snowtown murders and underscores the lethal consequences of hatred. Number 1. The Vault's discovery. On May 20th, 1999, police forced entry into the Snowtown bank building while investigating a missing person. Inside the vault, they discovered 6 plastic barrels containing human remains. The smell was overwhelming. The scale was shocking. As investigators pieced together evidence across multiple locations, the confirmed death toll reached 12. John Bunting and Robert Wagner were sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. James Velasquez also received life imprisonment. Mark Hayden was imprisoned for assisting in concealment. The case became one of Australia's most notorious criminal investigations. Suppression orders were placed to prevent prejudice during trial, limiting media reporting for years. The Snowtown murders were not just acts of violence. They were fueled by extremist ideology, prejudice, manipulation, and greed. They exposed how easily vulnerable individuals can be isolated, exploited, and erased, especially when communities dismiss warning signs. More than 2 decades later, the case remains a stark reminder that moral crusades rooted in hatred rarely end in justice, only devastation. If you found this episode informative, consider subscribing for more in-depth explorations of historical and criminal cases, told with context, accountability, and respect for victims. Until next time, stay aware and remember that vigilance begins long before headlines are written.